Welcome to the Care for the Caregiver webinar series. Our charity is focused on providing resources to people who are raising children with disabilities. We hope that you find this webinar helpful for you and for your family. Enjoy.
Hello, caregivers. So lovely to have everybody here today. Today, we are talking about something that is near and dear to my heart, especially as most of you guys know, I have two children with autism, and my son uses an AAC device. And October is AAC Awareness Month. And so we have Stacy Neustadt on today to talk to us about the do's and don'ts of getting started with an AAC device. I know so many parents who get this device and it is extremely overwhelming and they just don't know how to get going. And sometimes we just do it wrong. So, Stacy, thank you so much for being here and for coming on to tell us and help us step into this world of the AAC device, because it is something that's so different but can be so transformative to our children. So thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So today I'm going to talk about the do's and don'ts to getting started with AAC. So as Michelle said, my name is Stacy Neustadt. I'm a speech language pathologist and certified autism specialist. To tell you a little bit about myself, I have three kids. Our oldest just turned 24, the next one's 12, and our youngest is 5. And so we kind of get the whole age span. We love to be outdoors, as you can see in the picture. I actually am in Colorado right now, but I run a clinic, Bayo Enterprises, in Mesa, Arizona. And I also was the co-founder of Lexicom Tech, which is an AAC company. We create AAC apps because this is my passion. And it's been wonderful to share with some of our clients at Bayo Enterprises, as well as really clients throughout the world. So our objectives today is I want to just first define augmentative and alternative communication, because usually when people hear AAC, they immediately just think, oh, an iPad or one of those bulky devices. And it's actually so much more than that. I also want to explain the do's and don'ts to modeling when AAC communicator gets a device. The partner is actually even more important at that point, and modeling on the device is very, very important. I'm also going to identify the do's and don'ts of being a communication partner and list some activities for implementing the AAC system. So here are some just text of what AAC is. So it's augmentative and alternative communication. It's so many more things than you would think of. AAC is writing, typing, texting, which we do all day long. AAC is sign language or gestures. It's oftentimes known as, for many of you, as PECS, or picture exchange communication system. It is also speech generating devices like iPads or dedicated devices. But then it's also communication books, and sometimes it's referred to as POD, pragmatically organized dynamic display. So for those of you like me who are visual people, this is a visual representation. So if you think about it, how many times do we text people and even just use emojis to communicate what we're feeling or thinking? Our kids, they start out as gesturing, and we see that too with people who maybe haven't been introduced to AAC. They still gesture to communicate wants and needs or commenting, things like that. And then you see down here the traditional picture exchange communication. And then this is a speech generating device and an iPad. Like I said, there's also dedicated devices where that just means that it doesn't really do anything else. It's dedicated to just communication. And then there's communication books. And one thing that's shocking to people is really a communicator might use all of these. It might not just be a speech generating device. They might have a backup of their communication system as a book for when they travel, for when they go swimming. You're going to acknowledge gestures. If your child's trying to communicate with you and gesturing, you're not going to ignore that. You may have to pull out the communication device for some clarification. Are you pointing at that movie or did you want to play a game? So, really, communication is so many components. So, please keep that in mind that it's not one thing that we use for communication, just like all of us. Like right now, I'm talking to you, but earlier I was typing and sending an email. And even earlier today, I was texting and sending a message. So even I use alternative communication throughout the day. So, some do's and don'ts to getting started with AAC. Do take a deep breath. Don't let it intimidate you. When I've done trainings with instructional assistants at schools or parents, they say, "Oh, I just don't want to touch it. I'm afraid that I'm going to break it." Unless you throw it against the wall, you're not going to break it. And even then, you can get this a new device and get the system put back on there. So just take a deep breath and take it step by step. Do reach out to professionals. In Arizona, we have specific teams that do evaluations. There's also a lot of professionals out there that specialize in this. And I should take that back. There's not a lot, but there are some really, the people that are out there are really, really good. And so I do list some even just online professionals you can look at. So don't try to tackle it on your own. There are AAC specialists, there's assistive technology specialists, and then obviously as speech pathologists or speech therapists, speech language assistants. Those of us that have a passion for AC, those are the ones that you want to go to. And then just some experts in the field are listed here. Like I said, they've got website, they've got Pinterest, and they just have really great resources. And, they'll share information like this. What if I told you you don't have to start with PECs? And that's why reach out to the professionals. There's a lot of myths around how you should start, and there's a lot of myths around prerequisites, and there is absolutely no prerequisites to AAC. Everyone's input really counts. So it's really important that when searching for an AAC system for your child, reach out to the professionals, but then really communicate with them. But then also look at what your child or your loved one, how they're interested in communicating. So do look at what the communicator prefers and what you're comfortable with, because there are some systems out there that at first glance, they look very, very confusing because they have symbols that don't necessarily represent what you would think would represent that word. But then there's other systems out there that are real images, which some people prefer. So don't pick a system just because you like it. You need to look at, is your child understanding it? Are they able to navigate it? And then also really learning about it. Because I do get a lot of families who say, I just don't understand it. And understandably, just like your child, when it's presented to them, it's like getting a book in a different language, and you're not going to understand it instantly. But with some training, you will start to learn more about it. Do start AC as soon as you see the need. Don't delay language just because we all, of course, want our kids to talk. Absolutely. And we can work on speech at the same time that we're working on language. Because I always tell families, if you think about even babies, I'm sure we've all heard of baby signs. The reason baby signs came about is because our kids' language is developing so early before they can even talk. So then you think about a kiddo who's 5 and they still cannot speak. They've got so much language in their brains that they just want to say, and you're going to see behaviors and frustration because they can't communicate. So just because you're implementing the augmentative and alternative communication doesn't mean that you can't continue to work on speech. And actually, all the research shows that AAC actually helps improve that development of speech. Because if you think about it, if they have an AAC device and they're hitting eat, 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 and over and over and over again, and they hear it 1,000 times in a day, that's going to help progress their speech because their auditory system is being improved. And so start it as soon as you possibly can. Do explore robust systems. So what do I mean by robust? I have seen anywhere from all of these images of AAC systems to some that look more like video games. And it's literally just like cookie and park. And it's just what we call fringe vocabulary, those words that just get you exactly what you want. A robust system is going to have core words. It's going to have words like I, you, me, go, stop, more, all done. Words that can kind of be used in a variety of variety of settings for a variety of meanings. And then robust kind of means different for different people, because the other piece that's important to look at is visually, as well as access. How many cells can your child access? Maybe they have a visual impairment and they have to have less cells, or maybe there's a motor impairment and they need a key guard, or they need less cells because of that. But no matter what, their system should include core words as well as those fringe words, but then as well as multiple functions for communication. So they should be able to do more than just requests. They should be able to make comments, to advocate, stop, no, I don't like that, to share stories. Yesterday, park, so they can share what they did the day before, as well as just socializing. Hi, how are you? So a system is robust if it includes that. But also, again, don't assume one size fits all. Yes, there are absolutely the most popular apps out there and most popular AAC systems. And do they work for a lot of people? Absolutely. And then are there kids and people who could literally pick up any AAC system and just start using it? Absolutely. But on the flip side, are there kids who get it and throw it because they're like, I don't get it, I don't know how to use it? Absolutely. But that's where the modeling comes in, that's where the teaching comes in, that's where that whole idea of get everyone's input. Maybe the child doesn't understand the images, so including all of those pieces. And that's why working with a professional is super, super important. I think we take this for granted. I really do. Communication is a human right. Really think about it. If you were in the hospital and trached, and you just want to tell your loved one that you love them, or tell your nurse that you need a blanket, like how vulnerable is that? And we don't really think about it until we're in that position. But if you put yourself in your child's shoes or your loved one's shoes, and they don't have a way to say, I love you, mom, or a way to say, I had fun at school today. Like that is where they need to have an AC system in place so that they can share those. So do presume competence. Don't require those prerequisites. It's like I talked before. We never know what's going on in a child's brain. So we're going to assume that there's a lot of language up there. We're going to assume that they have that desire to communicate, which it may not look like it sometimes, but if we meet our kids' sensory needs and we really look at how our child is trying to connect with us, that's communication. That can even have language put to it. So if your child, goes and plays and they come back and they jump in your lap and give you good squeezes, and then they go back and play and they jump back in your lap, that's communication. And you can put words to it, because say they do that with their teacher and their teacher's like, I don't know why he keeps jumping in my lap. Well, if you can put some words to it and give them that right to communicate, he can say, I need squeezes, or I want your attention. And so that communication is super important. So here's another piece that I've really discovered over the years. A pattern I noticed with a lot of trainings is they start with programming. And you can argue with me if you want, but programming is not as important as knowing how to implement the AAC system. I can't tell you how many parents I've worked with where they're like, they showed me how to put the pictures in, but they never showed me how to use it with my child. And I'm sure our trainers are amazing, but they only get so many hours to do training. But that's where work with your current SLP, reach out to one of us who are passionate about AAC. We'd be happy to work with you outside of speech therapy to teach you how to implement the device, because that is way more important than learning how to put your dog into the device. Don't get me wrong, that's just as important, especially if your child loves your dog, but learning how to implement the device is really important first. So once you really learn that implementation, you are going to customize the system because, as a developer myself, we cannot figure out what every single person on earth is going to say. Are there a chunk of words that are frequent? Absolutely. And that's what we all, as vendors, put in our AAC systems, those core words, the common fringe words. We all love cookies. So cookies going to be in there, but you are going to have to customize it. Your family, the places you love to go. I love it when families put in phrases because I know for my kids, my 5-year-old daughter, she loves to use the word literally because we say that a lot in my family. So if she was an AAC communicator, I would put that in there because she imitates that as that's how our kids use language a lot. One thing to remember though is don't just fill it with fringe vocabulary. Those words I was talking about where unless it's highly, highly motivating, you're not going to put that in there, especially if say it's a routine that your child has to do, but they don't necessarily love doing it. You're not going to fill with all those unique words that aren't necessarily going to be meaningful for your child. So now we're going to go into some of the do's and don'ts of modeling AAC. So I do have this video, but for time's sake, if you Google aided language stimulation, you're going to see it's a little clip art video that's only 2 minutes long, where it's showing how a family discovers that once their non-speaking child gets a device, but she wasn't using it. And then they discovered, oh, if we use it too, she's going to start using it. Then all of a sudden she does, she starts using it. And this is a huge, huge piece that is oftentimes missing. Again, your family, you get an AC device, you think, oh, I'm going to give it to my child and they're just going to start talking. I think I've seen in all my years, maybe 5 clients pick it up and get how to use it. And I've worked with thousands of kids. So you are going to be such a crucial component to your child learning how to use this. And it's going to be through you modeling that language. So you can see this is what that little video looks like. So Google aided language stimulation, watch this 2-minute video. So there's a lot of terms for it. Modeling, partner aided input, natural aided language. They all are a little bit different in terms of when they're used. But modeling is really when you're talking to the communication partner who uses an AC system, you're modeling what you're saying, but it doesn't have to be every single word. So you do use the AC system while speaking. Don't assume the AC communicator will learn the system on their own. And again, like I said, when you're speaking, you don't have to say every single word. It's those keywords. Hey, what do you want to eat for dinner tonight? Hey, where do you want to go this weekend? This is a powerful image, and I want you to really look at it. By 18 months, babies have heard 4,300 to 80 hours of spoken language. And we don't expect them to be fluent speakers yet. Think about that. We don't. They don't talk yet. But if an AAC learner only sees symbols modeled for them for communication weekly, twice a week for 20 to 30 minutes, usually during speech therapy, it will take them 84 years before they become proficient. This is so important. And this is just therapy in general. If we're the ones talking to your kids all the time and teaching them language during therapy, and then at home things are very quiet, which I get it. We all love our quiet, but if there's no language modeling, it's going to take kids a long time to learn language. So please model those devices. So we're really modeling to teach language. So you're going to model those single words. But then also, if your child starts to pick it up and they navigate and they find the word cookie, celebrate. That's awesome. And then you're going to want to expand. Oh, you want to eat a cookie, because that's what we do verbally. If you think about when your kiddo is, if you have, kiddos that have developed language, typically you think about, they say car, cookie, airplane. You always just naturally expand. That is an airplane. Oh, that's a red car. You're going to do the same thing with your AAC communicator, but just expand one word. It's not like you have to do a whole sentence. Just expand that single word. And a really important thing to remember, a habit we often get into is that I want. Well, ironically, I want is not used very often. If you think about it, our kids are going to come up and they're going to use a different verb: eat cookie, go car, play airplane. So get in a habit of modeling those other words, because otherwise what happens is I frequently see kids where I want is added on to everything. And so learning, if it becomes like one word, I want cookie just becomes one word. And don't get me wrong, we will use I want. We go to Starbucks. So they say, what do you want? I would like. So it is used, but try to model some other verbs as well. So do model. Don't say use your words. If your child could use their words, they would be. Think about, if we can, we do. It's been proven in research that when somebody is able to do it, they do. Now, if you've seen your kid do it before, but they aren't doing it right now, look at what else is going on. Our kids have so many sensory things going on in the moment that maybe at that moment, they don't know what the expectation is. So they don't know what words to use. Maybe in that moment, they're overstimulated and in fight and flight mode. And so they can't get out their words. So please remove this phrase from your vocabulary. Trust me, I've used it myself, but I've learned it doesn't work. Instead, model what you think they might be trying to communicate. Oh, did you want to take a bath? I'm not quite sure what you're trying to tell me right now. Are you sad? Do you need a hug? And model some words to see if you can help figure out what's going on. Do model what you're doing or what you want to talk about. Don't just model commands and requests. Communication is so much more than that. If you think about it, how many requests do you make in a day? Again, Starbucks, that's probably about it. Or if you're going to order some food over the phone. But we don't really make requests throughout the day. What do we do during the day? We socialize. Hi, how are you? We share information. Oh, guess what? I just went up to the mountains and saw beautiful colors last weekend. We comment. Oh, that's a beautiful dress. So we use language in so many more ways. So make sure you're modeling that information as well. So think about some of your favorite things your child might use. Play-Doh. If the only language opportunity is I want Play-Doh, you're going to be kind of stuck. But then you're going to be modeling open. Ooh, it's squishy. Oh, it's hard. It's bad Play-Doh. We got to throw it away. Ooh, we can roll our Play-Doh. Even before you get to an activity, make a list either in your brain or on paper of all the words that you could talk about and model on the device when you're doing an activity. And find an activity that's motivating for your child. And I guarantee during that activity, while you're modeling the words, what naturally happens, not necessarily the first time, I always say give it 3 times. There's something about third time's the charm. Your child's going to start kind of imitating you. So you might be saying, ooh, fun Play-Doh. And all of a sudden they hit fun. And that's kind of how that pattern starts of, think about when you talk to, again, a child who's developing speech and language, typically you say a word, they imitate it back to you. Same thing happens with the device. So if you're modeling a fun activity on the device, they're going to start imitating after you. And then you know what's going to happen in the future. They're going to start doing it independently. Now, I really emphasize picking activities that your child loves. Now, why? One of the beautiful things that we're actually doing at Bayo Enterprises is we are really looking at how to best support our neurodiverse clients we work with. And we've really discovered that when we use motivation, when we use strengths, communication is occurring more. And what's naturally occurring as well is connection. So after you do a fun activity like this, I want you to really step back and think about, oh, wow, this was really a connecting moment with language. And don't get me wrong, there can be nonverbal connections of smiles and giggles as well. But we can't go through our whole life with just nonverbal communication. There has to be the language component as well. So look at the language, look at how that felt to do that activity. So think about, what does your child enjoy doing and what do they seek to do that you also enjoy? Because when you're both enjoying the activity is when you're really going to feel that connection. So some do's and don'ts of being a communication partner. Do encourage peers and siblings, other family members, every person around your child to be that communication partner, to model on the device. There's been a lot of research shown that when peers in class or when siblings model on devices, you also get that non-speaking child that's using a device starts to improve and use the device more as well. Don't limit the communication partners to just the speech therapist, to just you, to just dad, to just who's comfortable with it. Try to encourage everyone to model on the device. Because if you think about it too, if you went to a foreign country and only one person around you speaks English, that's going to feel kind of isolating, that's the only person that you can talk to because they speak the same language. How do you think that child feels when only one person is modeling a device and they are like, oh, okay, I get it because you get me, you understand I use this device? They're going to feel isolated. So encourage everyone to communicate with. So Rachel Medell is one of those awesome SLPs. She's in California. She has so many resources on her website. And one of her phrases is do inspire, don't require. This goes back to model that language that's going to connect you, not requiring. Do not use hand over hand. Do not make a child, oh, say cookie because you think they want the cookie. You're going to model it. And if they imitate cookie, awesome. If they don't, that's okay too. And you can kind of, hey, did you want a cookie? And if your child shakes their head, yes, or you recognize that. Oh, yeah, you do want a cookie. I got it right. Okay. And if you do that every single time, I guarantee you, your child's going to take the quickest approach. And if you think about it, if you have to kind of question what they're saying and then model on the device, then you have to acknowledge what's going to happen is they're just going to go straight to their device and tell you cookie because that's faster than that whole other interaction. So if you inspire them to communicate on their device and not require it, they're going to want to use it. This is such an important thing, and I can't emphasize it enough because I get so many parents that come to me and they say they don't want to use their device. They see it as work. Well, I guarantee it's because the device only comes out during speech. The device only comes out during snack time. The device only comes out during work or only comes out and is required. Then they are going to view it as work. And communication is not work. Communication, I'll go back to this, is about connection. That's how we connect with other people. Autonomy. Oh man, this is getting a lot. This is a hot topic right now. So being able to communicate what I want to say versus what you think I want to say is so important. And again, I think we take this for granted. And I have so been guilty because it's like we get in our minds, oh, the speech therapist is saying you should tell me what this picture is. Oh, just tell them tiger, say tiger. Well, then you're just spoon feeding it, and it's not what the child wants to say, or maybe it isn't what they know to say. Maybe they thought it was a cheetah and not a tiger. So when a child is trying to communicate something, acknowledge that communication. Again, don't require it. Don't use your hand to model, because all that is doing is taking away the autonomy, and it's not going to generalize. Your child is not going to start saying that word. Why? Because that's your brain looking at that picture, is your brain using your motor, your hand, to touch that picture. So your child's not going to learn it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some kids that need a little tactile help, maybe a little elbow. Sometimes our kids have had so much, they've been therapized and have had so much hand over hand, they do grab your hand. Slowly try to start to fade that and just start to model. Hey, I can say it. You can say it all by yourself too. These are your words. Teach that autonomy, empower with them with understanding that they can use their own words. Again, so important. And it's something that we haven't really thought about until all these things have come out in terms of research of why hand over hand doesn't necessarily work. I loved this. This was, I believe, an interview with Barry Prezance, but don't quote me. His name is Ian Nordling, and he did an interview with his speech therapist, and she does assist him a little bit, but you'll see it's a total different kind of assisting. He said, the very most loving thing you can do is to hear my words and believe them. So he's an AAC communicator. And a little side note, our communicators sometimes learn language traditionally. Sometimes they're Gestalt learners. And along with that is that echolalia. I've had kids grab lines from movies and use them absolutely in context. And I accept it and I understand, oh, Elmo's so sad. Don't be sad, Elmo. During those moments when, oh, wow, you are crying, you are really sad. Accept that communication. That is what that child's trying to say. Another big piece is don't make them say it again on the device. Again, if your child's communicating something to you, maybe they say sad. Don't make them say it on the device. They just said it. Maybe they say sad and you see them crying and you know that's what that means. Model on the device. Oh, I see you're so sad. Why model? Because your mom, you understood sad meant sad, but teacher might not. So by you modeling, you're providing that learning opportunity that they're seeing it, they're hearing it, they're knowing where it is on their device. So if they're with their teacher and they say sad to their teacher and their teacher's like, you want to go outside? I'm not sure what you're saying. And the child gets frustrated and goes to their device to fix the communication breakdown and says sad. It's because you model it. AAC is someone's voice. A big thing I see with devices is it's being used as receptive. It's being used as flashcards. But then also the big piece is it's someone's voice. So you need to ask before modeling. Again, going to the autonomy. It's funny because that was my post this morning was self-advocacy. I don't touch someone's device until I ask, hey, is it okay if I model on your talker, if I model on your words? Don't just assume it's okay. We have a lot of kids who absolutely refuse, whether it's a communication book, whether it's a speech generating device. They don't want anyone else touching it. We have to respect that. That is their voice. So what I usually recommend to families is, print out the pages so that you have a light tech version of it. If you can load the app onto your phone or a different iPad, you can model that way. So find a different way if your child does not want you to model, or explain to them why you're doing it. Because maybe they don't understand why. Hey, I really want to use your device so I can show you where the words are that I'm saying with my voice. So if they know the why behind it, it's going to be important too. As I've emphasized, Communication is about connection. It's not about compliance. So do connect through the communication. Don't force communication compliance. Don't say tiger, say cookies, say yes, because it's not going to go anywhere. They're just saying it to be compliant. And, again, all the research has shown that if somebody's communicating through compliance, I can't even begin to tell you how wrong that is, because if you think about, if you're teaching your child how to communicate through compliance, well, they're going to get taken advantage of when they're older. So you want to teach them now to be self-advocates, because you do not want horrible things to happen to them when they get older. And then you don't want to teach that they have to communicate, they have to be compliant with their communication. And again, that goes back to the modeling. When you're just modeling, you're teaching them language. But if you're forcing them to say words, that's teaching compliance. It's not teaching how to communicate. This one is really, really important. So that pause, and trust me, as a speech pathologist who loves to talk, this has been really hard for me. So sometimes I just have to stop talking. Sometimes I'll start a session and just say, hi, and literally just wait. And it may be 10 minutes before the child's ready to interact with me or communicate with me, but that's okay, because it's on their time. So do wait and allow that pause time, especially if you're asking a question. Hey, what'd you do at school today? And your child's able to answer that question. Or, hey, what kind of ice cream do you want? Again, and your child knows how to navigate to that page and knows how to use it. Allow that pause time. Don't assume what they're going to say. I love this communication bill of rights. Again, it goes back to communication is more than just requests. It's to express our feelings. It's to reject, advocate for themselves. It's to have access to information. It's to be listened to. Again, it goes back to that communication piece of just being heard. And if your child is just what we might call playing with their device, it's really babbling. There was a great podcast I listened to, talking with tech yesterday, about when your child is stimming on their device. It really can be looked at in so many different ways. It's babbling. It's the child teaching themselves how to use their device. But if your child says, rainbow, butterfly, cookie, park, acknowledge and listen to that. Holy cow, how crazy would that be if you saw a rainbow at the park and a butterfly while you were eating a cookie? Oh my gosh, that'd be crazy. And maybe you'll get a laugh out of it, but just acknowledge what they're saying as communication. So, questions. What do's will you implement as an AAC partner right away? Hopefully, I want you to really think about that in terms of how you're going to implement it. Did you want to chime in at all, Michelle, right now? I do have one more section, but chime in. Anything you can think of right now that you're thinking about, anything you're thinking about implementing?
It's absolutely amazing, because we got our AAC device for Jackson probably 5 years ago. And so much of the philosophy around how to model, teach, use the AAC device, I feel like has shifted in just 5 years. Because I remember when we got it for Jackson, it was like, it's his voice, you don't touch it, you don't model it, like nothing. It was like, oh, okay. Like, it's his voice, we're not going to touch it. And I remember you and I having conversations about, oh no, use it, model it, and it really has helped expand his vocabulary. And I absolutely love what you have to say about not forcing language compliance with it, because I think it is something that we always worry about, especially those of us that maybe even do some ABA with our kids, is that forced compliance, because we don't allow any kind of forced compliance anywhere else. And so then we shouldn't also allow for forced compliance when using an AAC device. So I think that that was really a great thing to take home. And I do have a question for you, because I know that a lot of kids that take AAC devices to schools, I know parents are having a hard time getting teachers to actually use the AAC device with their kids. And I'm wondering, and I know that this was a little outside of this, but what are do's that parents can do to ensure that the teachers are going to use the AAC device in the classroom for their kid? Because I know that that's a big hurdle.
It is. And I would say number one, get it put in your IEP that the staff is trained. Because I don't blame teachers for not using it if they've never been taught how to use it. How are we, any of us, supposed to use something that we've never been taught how to implement? So that's one side of it. Make sure that all the staff is trained on how to use it. And I know a lot of districts have AT teams that go out and do those things. Vendors are willing to go to schools to train people. So that's one side of it. So then you've got the other side of it. And this is kind of a little bit of a controversy right now. So you've got a classroom with 10 kids and say 5 different AAC systems. So there is one philosophy called universal language, where what's worse, having every kid use the same language system if they're able to, or having AC not implemented? Because, of course, there's, the individualism and whatnot. But if it's not being implemented, is it worth anything? Or if a teacher is trained how to use one system, are they going to use it? So I know there are some districts that have picked up on that philosophy. But don't get me wrong. Again, it's not one size fits all, but maybe just for that classroom setting, they're using, a certain set of symbols, or, what they sometimes do is look at the other kids that maybe aren't getting those symbols and figuring out how to accommodate with the symbols that they do have in their system. But number one is absolutely the training. For not just the teachers, but also the instructional assistants. And if you get over that hurdle of training everyone, and that kid understands the power of communication, you kind of don't have to do too much more. Because then it's like, I've had kids, like, once they get it, once they understand the power, they take that device with them everywhere. They use it in all situations. And so, just like any kid, if you're going to teach a new concept, you're going to model. If you're going to teach a new vocabulary word, you're going to model. But for the majority of the day, you kind of don't have to, because they get it. But I would definitely encourage the training for sure. And then baby steps. Teachers, especially since COVID, have so much on their plates. So maybe it's baby steps of just let my child have it out, please, all day. Because I know that's another piece of, if a child is stimming on it.
Yep.
I loved in the podcast, they recommended teach them how to turn it to a whisper. Because think about it. If your kid verbally talked, you're not going to put tape over their mouth. So don't take their device away. How to whisper, teach them how to turn the device down. And then teach them too, hey, you need to pay attention right now. We're not talking. So there's so many components to it.
So another question that I hear a lot is, if should you limit the vocabulary that you give your child? When we gave Jackson his AAC device, he had access to everything right away. But I also think that in the evaluation process, they figured out that he could navigate multiple pages. He kind of could figure that aspect out. So is that some decision that you should make with an SLP, with the person who's doing the evaluation of your son or daughter? How do you go about deciding what's open and available to them on their page? Because I've had parents who are like, I'm not going to put soda on there. I'm like, why? I'm like, if your child could talk, they could say soda. It's not like they don't know it's out there and in the world, right? So how do you decide what goes on the page and what doesn't go on the page, and what they should have access to?
I'm glad you're bringing that up. So I'm going to first talk about just visually what they should have access to. So there's two groups of thought. And again, some controversy around this. So you kind of choose where you want to go. So some people are in the belief that if a child is able to access it, you give them that many words. So for example, if they can access a 80 cell, you give them 80. Now, the theory of thought there is, again, human right. We're not going to take a bunch of words out of your brain and let you not use them. So giving them access. Now, don't get me wrong, there are kids visually that are like, oh my goodness, this is too much. So then you figure out kind of a happy medium to where like what isn't going to be too much. Then you have the whole idea of hiding. So typically, sometimes like, yeah, if I've got a kid where I'm like, oh, I would love him to do 80, but I see this is too much, I might hide just a little bit. Or I might just hide when I'm teaching a concept. I do that a lot, where if I'm teaching that motor planning of how to get to a certain word, I'm going to hide some so that they're focused and they see that motor planning of that. But as soon as the session's done, I open everything up again. Because like I said before, there was in the podcast, they talked about a kid who just pushed every single button and she learned her whole system that way. So presuming competence by giving them access to all of those words, you never know what your kid's going to say. Now, on the other topic of soda, again, this was actually an interesting post where it's a fight between a family and SLP right now, where the family does want to take off a word that they always ask for. But the human rights side is, if your kid could verbally talk, are you going to tape their mouth shut? Are you going to yell at them? No. And it's kind of our job as parents to say no sometimes. And that's okay. Our kids have to learn no. They have to learn no. It's a step in life where if they're 25 and they never learn the word no, you're going to have some major, big, giant man tantrums. It's okay to tell your kid no. And yes, again, once you get over the hurdle, but having that conversation. No, you can't have soda because you already had one today. No, you can't have soda because we only have soda on Saturdays. Giving that why behind it and explaining to them when they can have it, why they can't have it right now. It's so important. And then an alternative. No, you can't have any soda, but you can have some water, you can have some juice, but definitely don't take that word off because they're going to figure out a different way to ask for soda, whether it be going in the fridge and grabbing it or whatever. So don't take it off for sure.
So another question I have, and I think that this just kind of is a natural progression of speech, but as our kids get older, when our kids become teenagers, they're probably going to want to cuss. Like,
Mhm.
do you allow the cuss words on? The other thing that I'm constantly worried about is identification of body parts for male and female
Mhm.
parts. And when do you think that that's good to introduce that kind of vocabulary? And where do you put it? And because I know like you have pages that are like body parts, but do you just put
Mhm.
it on the arrow over page so that those kinds of images aren't front and center, but they're there and they know how to access them?
So they definitely need to be able to access that. And I would say teaching them as early as possible. Sadly to say, our kids are some of the most abused people because people take advantage of them. So that goes back to the compliance thing. If you don't teach your kid to be compliant with everyone, if you don't teach your kid that it's okay, anyone touches you and guides you, they're going to learn to self-advocate and say no, as well as if they learn the body parts, they're going to be able to self-advocate and teach and tell you about that body part. In terms of where it's located, that I would say is definitely going to be family preference, because there's some families that are very like, absolutely, let's talk about those words and it's going to be right there. Then some families that are more reserved. It should be in there, but where you decide to put it is up to you, as well as making sure the child knows where it is and getting their input, especially if they're old enough. And then absolutely with the cussing, For sure. I mean, even like maybe maybe you pick and choose what words are going to be in there, but if your kid's a teenager and they're going to join in with the other kids, um, having some of those phrases in there, you don't have to go full blown sailor mode, but like damn or darn or some of those, like maybe just throw some of those in there so they can again socialize with their peers, because it's not about just requests. Using some of those other words for sure. And then that even kind of goes into even older and sexuality and relationships, including that vocabulary in there too.
Are there packages for those designed into the AAC, or is that stuff? Because I feel like sometimes when I look at the AAC device, like it is built for children, and I don't really
It
see
is.
packages that are built for adults. So is that something you just change over time with your child?
So it's definitely something you change over time. And some of those images are in there, but they aren't put in there originally. But then the other piece you can do is reach out to the vendor that created your system, because there is, I know even for us, we worked with an adult with CP who really wanted all that vocabulary in there for sexual abuse. And there are some there's HIPAA, there's laws, there's all kinds of stuff that as vendors, we
Oh,
have
wow.
certain walls
Yeah,
where
yeah,
we
yeah.
can't put some stuff in there. So
Okay.
I would talk to the vendors and see what if there's not pictures in there for it, ask them if they have any vocabulary or anything that they can send you because you've requested it.
Okay. Very interesting. And I love what you have to say about not hiding words. The other day, my son was looking at a picture and he was like, the horse is galloping. And we were like, where the heck did you find galloping? Like, I didn't even know galloping was on your AAC device. And he's done that a couple of times. He was sick one night and we cuddled on the couch and I like grabbed the blanket and I curled him up in it and he grabbed his AAC device and he was like, good job, mom. And I had never
Oh,
heard him say that, and I never have taught him that phrase. And I was just like, "Ah," like ugly crying behind him because it was so cute. But it's amazing the stuff that they're picking up all the time, even if they don't show you all the time. It's like, man, it's in there, and it's
yes.
absolutely amazing. It's an amazing gift for us and for them. I feel like just that gift of communication, and connection, like
And
you
you
were
see
talking
that
about.
that connection exactly.
Hmm.
And that was where, like, that's why we presume competence. And that's why you may start with 80 cells, because you never know. And I've met Jackson. He's so sweet, but as a new person to Jackson, like he's very reserved. And I obviously, like, I would have to come to your house like every day for a week before he would probably open up to me. And so the fact that he does all those amazing things, not everyone in the world is going to see that.
Yeah.
And so I love that you provide the opportunity for him to communicate that with you. And a speech pathologist probably wouldn't see that. So the fact that he has access to all of that, and you as mom advocating for him, like, hey, I want this many cells for him because I know he knows a lot, is going to be huge, because a speech pathologist might see quiet Jackson and
Mhm.
not presume competence and give him a 4x4, which that drives me crazy. I've seen that with a lot of kids, and I can just look at them and be like, there's certain things kids can do that I'm like, wow, you've got a lot more up there than what we're taking, that we're thinking you do. And so I'm going to open all
Yeah,
kinds of words for you. So I love that.
it's cool. All right, I think you've covered a lot. You said I think you had one more slide, so I'll let you go
Just,
ahead and dive
yeah.
in.
So it's really about the activities. So the do's and don'ts of AAC activities and learning vocabulary. So do incorporate literacy, sit down and read books, find some of the keywords in the book and model it on the device. That's huge. I do have a little video on our lexicon website about me modeling a book. Snug, spontaneous novel utterance generation. Acknowledge everything. Like if you literally just were like, what sentence could I make right now? Model it on the device. do that as just like a fun activity with your kid, kind of like what I said before about rainbow, butterfly, park, cookie. Just create a spontaneous utterance and use that to be silly and connect. Do use strengths and motivations. Figure out if your kiddo is an intrinsically motivated kid or extrinsic. Are they motivated by the praise and the feel good, or are they motivated by watching TV? Look at that and use motivators, not only what they like to play with, but also what they're seeking to do. And do use those natural moments for language. Do start with activities that connect. Bedtime routine, modeling, I love you. Talking about your day, model, hey, today I worked hard. What did you do today? Model during playtime, during game time, those times when you're going to connect. And do find those language opportunities. I know that's so hard sometimes, especially, as adults, if we don't play anymore. But find that moment, that thing that you both like to do, and think about some words that you can model in that moment. So I will share this slide, all my slides, so that you do have access to all these websites, because these are some awesome people that are great AAC advocates and have been in the world forever. And I don't have my therapy director, but as you saw on the first slide, you can reach me at this Alexicom website, but then at therapy director at bayoenterprises.com. We do specialize in working with our neurodiverse kids at Bayo Enterprises. And so that does incorporate AAC for a lot of our clients. And we do have openings. So if families are looking for therapies, definitely give us a call.
Stacey, you're too modest to talk about Alexicom Tech, but I would like you to take 1 minute just to explain what it is,
Absolutely.
because it's so widely available and affordable for families. It's such a gift. I want you to take a minute to talk about it.
Thank you. Absolutely. So Alexicom Tech was founded 12 years ago after a client of mine who's an autistic young boy at the time. Now he's a young man, and the traditional AAC systems just didn't work for him. And at the time, they were really expensive. So fast forward 12, 13 years, we have created AAC apps that are for children, for teens, for adults. Our images are all real images when we can. Obviously, weird words like go and in and out have to have symbols, but they're real images. And why that's so important is because when you're a kid, you're going to want an image of a kid. When you're a teen, you're going to want an image of a teen. When you're an adult, you want an image of an adult. So those images do change by the page sets. And then we have schools page sets, home page sets. Another thing that we added when COVID started, and I realized this isn't the child disability platform, but it's affected us all, is COVID. So we have hospital page sets, like I talked about, where if you're in a hospital bed and you can't communicate, you're going to want to talk some way or another. So we have a whole healthcare set of AAC apps that are each 99 cents. This is not my full-time job. It is my side time gig passion. And so I'm not about making $1 million. I'm about providing people with a voice. So our apps range anywhere from 99 cents to our highest is $49. It's our school app because it includes tons of school vocabulary. And like I said, the thing that sets us apart is those real images. But the reason we wanted to make it so affordable, not just because it's my passion, is because we realize that the loops and the hoops that families have to jump through to get a device can be tricky. And especially as they get older, especially if they have Medicare. Medicare doesn't always give people devices. If you have an elderly parent who had a stroke, again, AAC benefits them. So we wanted to make it accessible for people where they don't have $1,000 to fork out. And then our apps also go as far back as like iPad 2. I think we used to be iPad 1, but Apple doesn't let us do that anymore. So if you can get a refurbished iPad, you can load one of our apps on for 99 cents and start communicating.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. Every time I talk to you about AAC, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to like have a meeting with Jackson's therapist and rework everything because I just absolutely appreciate and love your approach to it. So thank you for coming on. And this is
Thanks.
such wonderful advice. I know that so many parents don't always get this advice right in the beginning. And hopefully, with this, we will be able to provide some really substantial do's and don'ts right at the onset. And so, thank you so much for being here today and for doing all that you do in this space. It's needed and appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
All right, we'll see you guys all next time on our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this webinar. We hope that it was informative and will help empower your family as you integrate the AAC device into your life. For more webinars like this, please check out our other resources at careforthecaregivers.org.